My name's
Geralt,
Geralt, and I'm out here getting juice. Gotta blame it on the goose. Gotta blame it on the gooseberries.
Yeah, yeah, yee.
Yeah, yeah, yen. Yeah, yeah, yen.
Is that okay?
This is so dumb. I love it. Welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair, a global Witcher podcast. My name is Alyssa from GoodMorhen, and I'll be your host as you, I, and our international hanza accompany Geralt of Rivia and his destiny, Cirilla of Cintra, across the continent. I'm excited to introduce John of Rivia, a member of our international hanza who's become the newest patron on Patreon. Wishing a warm welcome to Julia and Sylvia of Skellige, who joined Louise, the owner of the Churlish Porpoise, Cool Guy Henry, Eric the Godling, Katie, the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob, David, and Mahakam Elder Joe as producer-level patrons of the show. As producer-level patrons, they receive an introduction shout-out, a spot on the website, monthly bonus content, stickers, a t-shirt, an exclusive producer gift, and producer credits in each and every episode. If you'd like to explore becoming a patron of the show, head over to patreon.com/breakfastinbeauclair. As for this episode, our friends Jess and Crisanto joined me in New York to discuss the title story from Andrzej Sapkowski's The Last Wish, The Last Wish. Join us in the original blanket for as we discuss themes such as class systems in the Witcher universe, the Femme Fatale, how callbacks enhance comedic rhetoric, too many pop culture references, and Quitty Wips. During the mid-episode break, Lars from Witcher Flicks returns with new information from recently published interviews with the cast and crew, as well as the schedule of Witcher-related sessions at next week's 2019 Lucca Comics and Games Festival. Speaking of, Lars and I will be meeting at the festival in Italy. If you have any local recommendations for Florence and Lucca, questions for the Netflix crew, or thoughts on the kind of coverage you'd like to see from our time there, let us know. Without further ado, let's get to this episode's short story, The Last Wish. Welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair. My name's Alyssa from GoodMorhen, and I'm excited to have my friends Jess and Crisanto.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
How's it going?
Should we say bonjour? Bonjour.
Bonjour, au Beauclair. Oh, we're right next to each other, by the way, right?
Yeah, we are. I'm really lucky to have Jess and Crisanto joining me in my home.
It's just made of blankets.
As of right now, yeah. So I live in a studio apartment, and we have turned it into a very small and very hot soundstage. So hopefully it sounds really great.
Can we post pictures in the show notes?
I will absolutely have to put pictures in the show notes because this is wild.
It's pretty cozy. I love a good blanket for it.
At the time of recording, it's August. I think this is going to probably air around October, maybe beginning of November. It's very, very hot in here.
Sorry about that.
We're not going to think about it.
It's okay. We're just anticipating the cozy of October. Wrapped around some blankets, you've got some tea. It's all good.
Jess, you're an avid reader and you're new to the Witcher universe. Thinking about the books that you've read, how does Sapkowski's work fit into your own personal canon of literature?
Well, these days I read mostly contemporary young adult fiction. People would call them teen novels and, coming of age stories, so it's really different from what I'm reading now. But it really goes back to my roots. I grew up reading Harry Potter, so this is totally like fantasy and magic.
Yeah.
I really liked it. And in terms of not just books, but also in TV, I really liked this series on BBC called Merlin. So it was this show about if Merlin and Arthur were the same age and they were buddies. That show, I just loved it so much, and this reminded me so much of it. All the magic and like the way magic is kind of taxed and restricted, and all the different creatures and monsters that pop up in every story. There was always a baddie of the week on that show, so it reminded me a lot of all the things that I kind of hold dear, and I don't know, it was really nice.
I like it. How do some of the thematic elements compare between, young adult novels and The Witcher?
Ooh, that broody hero, totally. I mean, when you talk about young adult novels, they're teenagers and they can be very broody. Geralt, he's not exactly in his feelings, but he's a dark horse. He's a dark hero, and you kind of see that a little bit in young adult. So even though he is kind of this dark horse, this dark hero, he still has feelings and he cares about his friends. The romance and the friendship, you definitely see that a lot in YA. And Geralt, even though he's the kind of guy who would take down a Striga and fight all the demons, he's still a softie on the inside, I feel like. So that comes up in YA a lot.
And Crisanto, how does the Witcher universe compare to other science fiction fantasy series that you're familiar with across all the mediums that you're into?
I'm a huge consumer of science fiction, enjoy graphic novels, do concept art, most directly, tonally and thematically, the Elder Scrolls series. The Elder Scrolls is a Western RPG. It's a open-ended, medieval-themed RPG in which it's very high fantasy. You meet lots of people, you play amongst politics, and you pretty much play Puppet Master. Very much in line with what I've seen with Geralt, at least thus far, with The Last Wish. It is very much a hero's journey story. It does have a lot of comedic elements, and it does fit the mold of contemporary blockbuster. There's romance, there's snark, there's action. It's a very straightforward story.
And is there anything that makes The Witcher stand out or explicitly different than anything else that you've read?
Yes. I think Geralt is snarkier than most fantasy protagonists that I have seen. In Game of Thrones, Tyrion has a lot of snarky comebacks and Quitty Wips, but Geralt is
Quitty Wips.
Quitty Wips. For any gamers who've played the Hitman series, he's very similar to Agent 47, but he is snarkier than most.
Geralt's got jokes.
He's got jokes, yeah, and a troubled past that we've yet to explore, at least in the 2 readings that Jess and I have done.
So I think that's a really good time to dive into our short story, which is the title story in The Last Wish, called The Last Wish. Part 1 starts with Dandelion and Geralt reeling catfish that breaks loose from the line. Dandelion finds a chipped stoneware jar with a seal, which he believes contains a djinn, a genie. As the bard and Witcher bicker, the jar falls into the sand and bursts red smoke, forming an enormous, distorted head. The djinn grabs the bard by the throat and Geralt fends it off, holding the seal in his hand and shouting an exorcism he had been taught by a priestess. The seal burns and the djinn runs off. Geralt checks on Dandelion, who immediately vomits blood.
Again, ooh, fun. But yeah, I would not survive in this universe where I'd have to catch my own catfish.
It's a 12-foot long catfish. This thing is massive. I'm 5'2". Like,
yeah, if you put like the 2 of us together, we'd still be shorter.
Dandelion finds a stoneware jar, and it has this curious seal on it, which has a broken cross and a 9-pointed star. Geralt tells Dandelion, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. Dandelion, being, I think, as playful as he is, or as he believes to be.
Or stupid.
A little dumb in this scenario, where Geralt is very serious in this moment, saying, don't touch it. Like, someone knocks it over, the seal falls off. This huge cloud of red smoke comes out. Geralt immediately runs for his sword, and Dandelion just stands in front of the red smoke and starts demanding things from it.
She's like, hey, what's up? I would like 3 wishes, please.
Yeah, Dandelion stands in front of it. In my mind, this like power stance, like hands on his hips, feet spread apart, pompous and overconfident as to what he's commanding this creature to do.
What did he wish for? I forgot. I know one of the wishes was, oh yeah, he asked this girl, Virginia, who always denies his advances, would succumb to his advances. And I'm like, ew, gross. Like, that's really creepy. Consent is important. And then the first one was, he
wanted a competitor to die.
Yeah, to just drop dead. I'm like, what?
That's dark. Yeah, I mean, all factors considered, didn't he technically release the genie?
I feel like it's also very short-sighted.
Yeah.
Especially if he wants that girl to fall in love with him. Dandelion is known to be a womanizer. So what's the point of having this one girl fall in love with him when he's not going to do anything about it?
You know, if the girl is not succumbing to your wiles or whatever, if you have to have someone's consent taken away in order to like you, that means they don't like you. So I mean, just move on.
Yeah, we also don't know if that genie granted that wish, what that love could or would look like.
Yeah, I think the wording that was used, at least in our English translation, was that she would succumb to my advances. Okay, so she succumbs to your advances, then what? Like, what happens after that? Then she just goes back to be like, nope, sorry, see you later.
It's very open interpretation. I mean, in my head, succumbing to my advances, that's just me waving at another person and then them waving back.
Yeah, that could be.
My advances have worked.
Great job.
Yeah, this is nearsighted thirst at its prime.
The djinn grabs Dandelion by the throat and starts strangling him. Geralt gets a silver sword, chops the air around the djinn, and after the djinn drops Dandelion, he grabs the seal, shouts out an exorcism, and the seal burns really hot, and the djinn screams and runs off. And in talking about the exorcism, Sapkowski notes that Geralt had never used those words until now because in principle he didn't believe in superstitions. I think that says a lot about Geralt's character.
Yeah, he's definitely a realist, especially being a witcher. I feel like as a witcher you're taken when you're young, right? Mm-hmm. So he's kind of just thrown into the world. It's not like he was a convert and he chose to be in this world. It was like it was chosen for him.
Yeah, he's hyper pragmatic. It's a very black and white, cutthroat understanding of the world. You can't interpret it in those nuances.
In part 2, Geralt reaches a gate after traveling with Dandelion all day. They're barred by the guards who won't let them through at night despite Dandelion's state. They're taken to the Barbican where they meet 2 elves in a knight, Caradon, his cousin Erdal, and the knight Vladimir. Geralt gives the men a guarded retelling of the events of the river. Clearly needing magical healing, the elves tell Geralt about one sorceress who is staying in Rindi under the protection and asylum of a merchant from Novigrad. She has little regard for the law and is making a mockery of the local Redanian counselors. The sorceress is Yennefer of Vengerberg. When Geralt and Dandelion reach the gate, the guards won't let them pass unless a person has either a royal exception or a political exception. The bard and the witcher are forced to spend the night outside the gate, and this is really interesting, and it provides a little bit of background into families and classes. Crisanto, you had a note about this as well.
Yeah, at this point, Geralt notes Vladimir's crest on his shield. His coat of arms is a shield divided per cross and bearing golden lilies cut diagonally by a silver bar. Geralt notes that he's of mixed race. I found this really interesting because jumping straight into the story, really didn't have an idea of the lore, at least politically, and how the class structure is. Yeah, it's interesting to note that Geralt is sensitive to this. He has some sense of social awareness.
Yeah, for sure. And I find the note about medieval heraldry really interesting. The silver bar means this, and he's not only illegitimate, but he comes from a mixed human, non-human family. What? I don't have anything better to say than damn, that's really cool. So getting back to the events in the Barbican, they meet the elves in the night, and Geralt tells them about the events of the river.
Do you think that these are really hard to pronounce because we're American, or is it just that's just the world?
I mean, it probably is. As you read the books and you learn more about the different independent kingdoms that make up the north, and then as well as the Nilfgaardian Empire in the south, you do see that Sapkowski uses regional names and regional conventions. But you get very difficult things for me that I know I have a very strong Northeast American accent.
Same.
So there are definitely things that I'm just I'm going to sound stupid pronouncing this, but I'll do my best.
You gotta stop pronouncing his name like that.
Okay, Bernie Sanders just entered the soundstage.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Even the fact that they have to come into a walled city, we don't really have walled cities in the US. In Europe, that was a very common thing. They would create walled cities, and it was very intentional of who they are trying to keep out. They want to keep the riffraff out and keep certain people in, whether that's a method of control as well. But yeah, I also studied about it in Romania. And Romania was essentially controlled by invading forces of Russia and what is modern-day Germany and Hungary. And so these walled cities were actually a form of oppression because it would keep certain people in, keep certain people out. And there aren't that many walled cities left in Romania, as far as I know, because they tore them down once they were, freed and became independent. According to the tour guide, I mean, it's not like I'm Romanian and I know anything, but according to the tour guide, there's not as many as there were left because they wanted to get rid of that oppressive force.
I mean, despite not having, physical walls, you still see the isolation of certain groups, especially in urban areas. That geographical divide is still used as systemic oppression, even though those physical barriers are no longer there or haven't been there.
But yeah, you have to be really intentional about breaking down those walls, whether it's physically tearing down a wall or, just having intentional policies put in place to counteract those invisible walls that have been put up over time.
Mm-hmm.
Those figurative walls are a lot more insidious. It takes a large nexus of control to maintain those walls, especially political ones. The physical barriers are, relics of more war-torn eras where the strife was clear. You knew who your enemies were and who they weren't. But in, times of peace or relative ease, it's trickier, when the barriers are economical, political, racial.
It's like a false sense of security. You don't realize you're trapped in a box because you can't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also the perception that you won't be able to transcend whatever political, social, economical level that you're at. And that's also terrifying, not being able to see beyond what you can imagine, really.
How do you get out of your box if you don't know if you're in a box?
The Matrix.
Jordan Peele, in his recent movie, Get Out, calls it the sunken place.
Yes.
A zone of extreme hopelessness and pure social and mental sensory deprivation. You don't know what's going on. You don't know how to solve your issues. You don't know how to rise above your social strata. And that's scary. Yeah, it's funny. We see a hint of this in this passage when Geralt notes Vladimir's crest. There is a clear social hierarchy.
Yeah. And I mean, you see it in other ways too. So not only with the Knight's Crest, but also they talk a little bit about the boycott of magic.
The taxation on magic, the limitations on magic, that actually reminded me a lot of BBC's Merlin. The reason why it reminded me of this cozy little show that I used to like was because that show imagines a world where magic is banned.
Is it explained further on why magicians are boycotted?
There's always tensions and skepticism between magic people and non-magic people. And I think you would expect that in any medieval world.
Dirty muggles. Sorry.
Bring it back to Harry Potter. But seriously, I mean, you have a taxation. Why do you tax something? You want to make money off of it. And the taxation is a kind of like it's trying to cripple someone. Not that taxation in general is to cripple someone, but it's just a fringe benefit probably that you're handicapping someone who's really, really powerful.
The elves tell Geralt a little bit about a sorceress that is staying in the town. She's apparently been just making a mockery of all the local councilmen, and everyone's trying to bring her down. But she has asylum, and she's kind of politically safe. The last line that we hear is that she's named Yennefer Vengerberg.
Dun dun dun. It's not like it's ominous, it's just like, ooh. It's like, it's what we've been waiting for. How did they meet?
I mean, so far it's just been this...
Brofest.
Yeah, this huge sausage fest, yeah. With awkward names and catfishes and, you know, muscly genies with cat paws. First female, this ratio is amazing. This is sprat-worthy.
In part 3, the Witcher knocks out Beaubrant's porter and enters the house, where he finds the merchant completely naked in the kitchen, muttering about apple juice. As Geralt tries to help him, Brant falls asleep, and Geralt takes the juice and continues through the house. He comes across a room covered in dirty drinkware and dishes smelling of lilac and gooseberries, which leads him to a bedroom and the sorceress inside. He gives her the juice, and she suspiciously asks him who he is before attacking him with a spell. Geralt introduces himself. Yennefer has heard of him, the famous White Wolf. Geralt begins to tell her why he's there, and she cuts him off for a bath and tells him to join her.
Okay, can we talk about how he knocked out the porter? Like, it was like a Joss Whedon level, like, one-liner. So earlier, I think in an earlier part, someone advises Geralt to bring this big coin sack because you're going to need money to kind of bribe your way in. The words he says is, money opens all doors. And then so when he's trying to get past this porter, he doesn't actually give the guy any money. He literally takes the sack of money and whoops him over the head. And he literally says out loud, money opens all doors. And I was like, what? This is like a line out of Buffy the Vampire Slayer or like Avengers or something, and that's why it brought me back to Joss Whedon, like those one-liners.
I feel like it's absolutely like new era Thor, and also Jonah Hill in 21 Jump Street. Like that's the kind of thing that I totally imagine Jonah Hill or Channing Tatum would say.
Yeah, I think it was at this moment that I realized like this could totally be a TV show, and I'm so excited for the show to have. I really hope the snark and the Quitty Wips are gonna be in the show.
Quitty Wips.
Quitty Wips. I'm surprised Geralt didn't just pat himself on the back at that moment. Just like, yeah, buddy, that was a good one.
It's just so silly. As these short stories have expanded on the lore, the worlds, and the main character, it just gives so much more room for weird character quirks like this. It's so dumb.
He doesn't do anything to the body either. He knocks him out.
No, he pulls him into a little room where there's like a woman with her dress hiked up over her hips.
Oh, yes.
And then he shoves the porter in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he comes into the kitchen and like some guy's muttering about apple juice. I was like, wow.
He's naked.
Yeah, oh yeah, and he was naked muttering about apple juice and was like, you live your best life, dude.
That's Beaubrant. That's the honorary ambassador to Novigrad. This is someone in a good enough political position where he can give someone who's harassing the town and the councilors just complete asylum and complete protection. There he is in his kitchen, butt naked, presumably drunk out of his mind. Yeah, and he's looking for apple juice, and then he just falls asleep there. Like, it's such a high contrast from what we know about him politically and what we actually see of him.
Actually, that kind of makes sense to me. I feel like this privileged guy who's kind of like, yeah, I run this place. I could run around my house naked and muttering about apple juice, no problem.
But I wonder if it's the kind of thing where, like, you have a very strong political status and, like, you rule things outside of the home, and then inside of the home, you want to be ruled.
Oh, right. Yeah, let's lose. I just got what you were alluding to. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I wonder if we know what kind of incognito sites he visits in his free time.
Probably involves apple juice. It's all.
Oh, dear. Is that the safe word?
Apple juice? I thought of gooseberries and witty quips.
Witty quips?
And Quitty Wips. I love how Geralt is just so degaff about it. He just walks in and he's like,
I mean, he does say at some point, I knocked out the porter. If I don't do this, it's going to be all for naught. So I'm just going to do this. Like, Dandelion needs my help. So he just kind of chalks it up and then just goes to talk to Yennefer.
He's so brutally pragmatic. It is incredible how he just literally sees a straight line and just goes, I'll do what I need to do.
Everything seems to align just right for him in this case. He knocks out the porter and then he just happens to find the man of the house who just happens to give him the apple juice that will just happen to make Yennefer listen to him. We're about to get there. So Geralt, continues on through the house after he finds Beauclair. So he ends up in the bedroom, just sees this huge mass of black curls, which then asks him for apple juice. Geralt gives it to the woman in the bed, who turns out to be Yennefer. And as she wakes up, she asks a few questions, and he's like, which one do you want me to answer first? She just attacks him with a spell off the bat. Geralt parries it, and up until this point, presumably she assumes that he's completely human. So when Geralt parries the spell, she asks him who he is.
And where's my apple juice?
Like, ooh, who it is?
There's thirst all around. Actually not yet. We're building towards that.
Literal thirst, though, because she wants apple juice.
And then we're going to get to physical thirst,
wow.
I think.
Wow, so dynamic.
Yeah, he's living his best life. Geralt, oh man.
He seems to by accident.
So this is their first time meeting, right? So this famed couple, because when I got into the series, I didn't know anything about it. I did a quick Google search, what is this about? And Yennefer and Geralt came up as one of the very first things. People are shipping these people really hard. And so this is kind of their first time meeting each other. So it's a very interesting meeting. You wouldn't expect someone to be shipped so well when they start off with a couple of insults, saying hey, you smell. I can smell a horse on you.
Yeah, this is not a rom-com meet cute
but then
at all.
Again, it is, though.
It is very much a rom-com. I don't know what dorm room has, rich linens, naked women, and I think one of the bedposts is a fawn, a half goat, half man. They are into some careless whispers business. Definitely a sex room.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, all the bedposts are just covered in these fantastical pictures of people in various poses, and you can pretty much allude what that is. The narrator notes that the room before the bedroom is just covered in glassware and smells of sour wine and candles, and there's just clothes strewn everywhere, like a stocking and basilisk slippers, which he notes were the most expensive raw material in the world, which could be used in the making of shoes. This is a woman, a sorceress of expensive taste and of high, presumably political, cultural, social stature. In part 4, in the baths, Yennefer turns herself invisible while Geralt tells her about the events at the river. Geralt tells Yennefer about Dandelion's wishes, not hiding his skepticism of the fairy tale belief that djinns grant wishes. Yennefer asks Geralt if Dandelion has a seal from the bottle. Geralt lies and says the bard might, knowing full well that he has it himself. Yennefer opens a portal to Earl's home, where Dandelion is staying, and the pair travel through.
And what you didn't mention was that this is the part where mentally Pony by Genuine starts fading in. It gets really sexy. The way that the soap bubbles kind of curved around her breasts, where her breasts would be. He's getting a little bit blushy. He's trying to turn away. He's oh, excuse me. Just kind of, he wants to turn around. And I was really surprised. I was Mr. Tough Guy who could take down a Striga. And he's just oh, a lady. Excuse me.
And yeah, he's just standing there all the while. We don't really get Yennefer's perspective. Can you imagine her just staring at this dude?
Oh, I can
several
imagine.
Feet away.
Yeah, she's trying to ham it up.
Based on what we know about her character, she full well knows what she's doing and how this would affect him, I'd imagine.
It is consistent with a Femme Fatale, right? Very much in power. She knows how to manipulate and seduce.
And very unapologetic about it. If this is going to get her what she needs, she has no qualms.
There's a bit of fencing going on, you can tell. This is a rom-com. Oh my gosh, at this point.
Yeah, they're kind of quipping at each other, or whipping at, no, not whipping. Quipping, because I was kind of going back to the witty whipping. Oh god, yeah, they've got the banter and
which is classic rom-com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knew? Coming as an outsider, you think oh, it's high fantasy and it's a video game. It's probably gonna be really bro-y. It's totally in my wheelhouse, this rom-com.
It's very human. They all have their very individual wants, needs, desires that really inform their decisions throughout the plot. And I find that the ensemble cast that this series has is absolutely incredible when you consider how many people are there of all different races and all of their political and social intentions.
Really well-rounded.
So 2 things I want to talk about here. Geralt, when he's telling this story about what happened at the river, Yennefer asks how Geralt drove away the djinn, and he says, with an incantation and exorcism. She asks which one. He repeats the incantation, substituting the vowel E with an intake of breath, according to the safety rule. He thought he'd impress the sorceress by knowing the rule, so he was surprised when he heard laughter coming from the tub. That wasn't an incantation, Geralt, nor would I advise you to repeat those words in other temples. What was it if not an incantation? A witty saying, if rather indecent.
Okay, it wasn't that witty.
We find out later what it is.
Yeah, so when you find out later what he actually said and what it means, you're just like, okay, it wasn't that witty. And I guess, yeah, it was pretty indecent, but...
it's pretty straightforward.
The other thing is that when Yennefer asks Geralt if Dandelion still has the seal from the bottle, Geralt lies to her and says that he might, but also notes that experience taught him that sorcerers shouldn't be told too much. So again, I think this comes back to the discussions about races and classes within the Witcher universe and tension and skepticism that happen between each of these different classes.
I really like the subtext here because essentially these two are feeling each other out during this conversation. And they're not trying to show their own hands too much because more information basically gives your opponent leverage on you. They're playing coy, they're hiding information, while at the same time bantering and insulting each other. So I really like the subtext.
After hearing what Geralt has to say, Yennefer opens a portal to Errol's home, where Dandelion is staying, and the pair travel through. In part 5, Geralt waits with Corydon in Errol's home for Yennefer to finish with Dandelion. Corydon warns Geralt of the unapologetic danger that Yennefer is capable of. Yennefer asks Geralt to come into the room, and she locks him inside. Dandelion is asleep in the bed, and she's laid a magical trap across the floor. Yennefer demands a seal from Geralt, paralyzing him with magic. Yennefer tells Geralt that he's going to, quote, settle her debts. She kisses him suddenly, and Geralt feels magic, hears his own voice talking to Yennefer, and then nothingness. When we first get into Errol's home, Geralt and Corydon are sitting and talking, just kind of waiting outside. Corydon has feelings for Yennefer. He's protective of her, but still has been jilted by her. And here he tells Geralt, it's almost as though you thought a scorpion was prettier than a spider because it's got such a lovely tail. Be careful, Geralt. You're not the first to have judged her like that without knowing she's turned her charm and beauty into weapons. Weapons she uses skillfully and without scruple.
So first of all, it sounds like he's talking from experience. We can see what you're trying to do. Nice try. Very subtle.
And this comes back, I think, around to, Crisanto, what you said about, the femme fatale and the characterization of Yennefer in this kind of trope. She has weaponized anything that she can in order to get what she wants.
I don't want to say she's been around, but there's a small universe that revolves around her. We got our first hints with Corydon, who explained the situation with her in the asylum. We see this in Beau, the merchant. He seems to be at her beck and call. And now we're seeing it again with Corydon, who is trying to keep Geralt away from her for obvious reasons. We're starting to see a pattern, and that pattern is becoming more prominent.
And more personal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Geralt / the narrator in Geralt's head says, each to their own taste, but in actual fact, not many would describe sorceresses as good-looking. Indeed, all of them have come from social circles where the only fate for daughters would be marriage. Who would have thought of condemning their daughter to years of tedious studies and the tortures of somatic mutations if she could be given away in marriage and advantageously allied? Who wished to have the sorceress in their family? Despite the respect enjoyed by magicians, a sorceress's family did not benefit from her in the least, because by the time the girl had completed her education, nothing tied her to her family anymore. Only brotherhood counted to the exclusion of all else, so only daughters with no chance of finding a husband became sorceresses. Unlike priestesses and druidesses, who only unwillingly took ugly or crippled girls, sorcerers took anyone who showed evidence of a predisposition. If the child passed the first years of training, magic entered the equation. The young sorceress would become attractive because the prestige of her profession demanded it. The result was a pseudo-pretty woman with the angry and cold eyes of ugly girls. Girls who couldn't forget their ugliness had been covered by the mask of magic only for the prestige of their profession. Which...
Okay. Okay, so first of all, let's address that this whole speech is pretty much him saying, I know what I'm getting into. I see right through this. And this last line that we kind of just went, oof. Girls who couldn't forget their ugliness had been covered by the mask of magic only for the prestige of their profession. It makes them seem like they're obsessed with their beauty / ugliness. And in reality, I think it's more that society is obsessed with women's beauty and ugliness, and the sorcerer is just trying to kind of counteract that. They're trying to bend their appearance just to be taken seriously. So it's really not about vanity. It's about kind of taking control back in their hands and saying, you're gonna ignore me because I'm ugly? Well, guess what? I could make myself beautiful and you can't ignore me now. I have the power.
It says a lot about, I think, how the perception of beauty affects social value.
Yeah, because I guess this world is supposed to emulate some type of medieval age where women weren't taken seriously, they weren't equals. And even in modern times, I feel like this is an issue still, where I feel like a sorcerer, she has better things to do. I mean, I feel like the idea that she's making herself look beautiful, that's not for her. It's just so she could be taken seriously. And in this world, this medieval world, you as a woman can't be taken seriously unless you're beautiful, unless you're married to someone powerful. So they're just trying to, make it in the world.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if this is a reflection of Sapkowski's own values or whether it was really a world that mirrored, the medieval times in which being a woman meant you're just pumping out babies, right? The interesting part I found about this passage is that it expands into, women's roles as sucky as it is. For some reason, I just imagine geishas in the sense that, they provide that service, and yet they're still bound by, society's very unflattering outlook on them. Their service, they're professional musicians, calligraphists, singers. Yeah, so they were highly valued in that society, and yet unfortunately that they cannot escape the male gaze, and they're bound by these rules of society. One thing I do appreciate about this is that it frames Yennefer and her struggles. There's a sense that there's more to her than we understand because the society is kind of shitty to her. There are layers and there are reasons for her and why these walls are up.
I think it's also the coming of independence. And again, I think it's magic that does that for these women, having a certain element of power, whether they're seeking this very chaotic power over others or just power in order to better the world. But I think that, this beautification of these women is more of a means to an end. But this is one of the ways in the society that young women are able to get out of this kind of social and cultural oppression. So to get back to the plot, Yennefer asks Geralt to come into the room, and then she traps him inside. There's just this huge drawing in pentagram. There are candles. There's an orb in the center. She demands this seal from him. He starts to kind of wax this intense moral monologue at her. As he's doing that, he freezes physically. She kind of laughs to herself, and she was like, I wonder when you would feel it. I knew you would deflect a spell thrown straight at you, so she decides to paralyze him with magic. She notes here, I also knew that before you tried anything, you tried to impress me with your eloquence. You were talking while the spell hanging over you was working and slowly breaking you. Now you can only talk, but you don't have to impress me anymore. I know you're eloquent. Any further efforts in that direction will only spoil the effect. Geralt here says, someone's going to figure it out. Someone's going to know something's wrong. And Yennefer responds, what if Corydon does figure it out? Is he going to run for help? Nobody will get through my barrier. But Corydon's not going to run anywhere. He won't do anything against me. Anything. He's under my spell. And no, it's not a question of black sorcery. I didn't do anything in that way. It's a simple question of body chemistry. He's fallen in love with me, the blockhead. Didn't you know? Can you imagine he even intended to challenge Bo to a duel, the jealous elf? That rarely happens. Geralt, it's not for nothing that I chose this house. My God, you see her weaponization of self in full form. She is so self-aware of what she is doing to everybody else.
And it's so funny because earlier, Crisanto, you were saying, it seems like Yennefer has left a wake of tears behind her. And it's totally, I don't know if it's entirely intentional. She's pretty much saying here, it's not my fault that you fell in love with me. Sorry about it.
Yeah, she's definitely leveraging what's been more or less handed to her.
Exactly. So she needs to get what she wants. And sorry if you fell in love with me, but I got to do what I got to do.
She's capitalizing. Yeah, she doesn't really have to care about how others perceive her.
Oh, I feel like this is that Lizzo song.
The juice?
It's it's something.
The apple juice. Blame it on the apple juice. I do love the setup here. In their first bout, when Yennefer throws the energy blast at Geralt in the bedroom, he deflects it, and in this scene, she pretty much has him down pat already. She has the pattern recognition down, and now in this their second meeting, she capitalizes on it.
I wonder how much that says about her versus about Geralt. Either she's really smart, or
she's smarter.
He's insanely simple and very predictable. And it's probably a very wonderful combination of both. So at this point, Yennefer tells Geralt that she's going to, quote, settle her debts. Debts that could be settled by anyone, but she'll have him do. She kisses him really suddenly, and Geralt feels magic, has this very out-of-body experience where he hears his own voice saying like, yes, my lady, anything, my lady. He leaves the house. Everyone that's in the house see his eyes and they just back away from him because they know something is wrong. He marches out of the house and then he blacks out completely.
Pure femme fatale at this moment. She's using her sex appeal plus these other abilities to take advantage of it. I love the blackout because it is a deliberate cliffhanger and it sets up some hilarious hangover-esque moments.
So we're going to cut to a break, and when we return, Jess, Crisanto, and I will continue with The Last Wish.
Hey, it's Lars from Witcher Flix, and this is Tidings from Toussaint. The time of silence when it comes to Witcher news is almost over, so let's jump right into it. As previously reported in the last edition of Tidings from Toussaint, the Witcher crew will visit the Lucca Comics and Games Convention in Italy. There will be a lot of Witcher-related events in the course of the convention, which lasts from October 30th to November 2nd. The whole Witcher craze will start on October 30th with cosplayers dressed as Witcher characters from the show, roaming the streets of Lucca, and a Witcher Academy where visitors can learn real Witcher skills. At 2 p.m. local time, author Andrzej Sapkowski will hold a panel and tell us everything about the Witcher story. The next day it gets even more interesting. On October 31st at 3 p.m. local time, there will be a Netflix Witcher panel with showrunner Lauren S. Hisrick, author Andrzej Sapkowski, and the two actresses Anya Chalotra and Freya Allen. Rumor has it that they will show the next Witcher trailer during this panel. The next day, on November 1st at 2 p.m. local time, there will be another Witcher panel. Tomasz Baginski, executive producer of the show, Tim Aslam, costume designer, and Andrew Laws, production designer, will talk about the show. Or as Tomasz Baginski said on his Facebook account, so if someone wants to grill us about the Nilfgaardian armor, Calanthes hair color, Slavic motifs, and anything else, do that there. This sounds absolutely awesome. And the best thing about this is, me and Alyssa will be in Lucca, so make sure to have an eye on our Instagram and Twitter pages when the Lucca Comics and Games Convention takes place. In other news, in the French magazine Premiere, Henry Cavill was asked about the show. Henry again talked about his history with Geralt of Rivia. He said, I discovered the games, then I discovered the books, and the universe of The Witcher instantly meant something to me. I often thought about playing Geralt. When the opportunity appeared, I didn't let a chance pass me. I asked my agent to make me meet Lauren as soon as possible. I didn't even have the need to prepare myself for the role, because I live this universe every day. I already got numerous opportunities to think about this character while I was playing the games. My preparation was already made before the casting started. If you ask me, there's no one better fitting to play Geralt. This enthusiasm is just great. Once again, we learned more about characters that were cast in the show. We already knew that actor Caleb Coates had been cast, but now we know his role on The Witcher show. According to his CV on Spotlight.com, he has been cast in a role named Doppler Mausack. The storyline he will appear in has to be original, as there is no Doppler version of the druid Mausack in the books. Moreover, we already know that there is a Doppler Kahir in some plot of the show. So it's definitely possible these two Doppler characters appear side by side. As a reminder, a Doppler is a shapeshifter who can transform into anyone he likes if he has a similar body weight. Moreover, Hungarian actor Levente Lipai will play an original character, Seke, in episode 2 of the show. I'd like to finish this edition of Tidings from Toussaint with a nice little rumor from the set, brought to us by Redanian intelligence. They report that Geralt will find himself in a Nilfgaardian camp at one point after a battle. There he has to fight ghouls. This scene could be a reinterpretation of Geralt getting attacked by ghouls from the short story Something More. Moreover, Redanian intelligence wrote that they heard Eamon Farron, who will play Kahir, will be leading reinforcement troops into battle. They also heard that the Nilfgaardian commander was described as a relatively thin man with short bright hair. Mimi Hindiveni as the sorceress Fringilla Vigo was also present. Last but not least, there's also supposed to be a scene of the mage Vilgefortz, played by Mahesh Jadoo, annihilating a survivor. This big battle that is described in these scenes is almost definitely the famous Battle of Sodden Hill between the North and Nilfgaard. Anyway, guys, that's it for me for today. We'll talk again in the next episode of Breakfast in Beauclair. Until then, thanks again for listening and good luck on the path.
Thanks so much for the update, Lars. Welcome back from the break. I'm here with Jess and Crisanto to continue our discussion of the title short story from Andrzej Sapkowski's The Last Wish. So when we left off, Geralt had come into the town of Rindi with Dandelion, who was attacked by a genie, and he had gone seeking for help, and he had found Yennefer, the only sorceress in town. At this point in the story, Geralt has visited her. She's decided to help him. Turns out she trapped him and has now set him into town in order to fulfill some sort of purpose, and the Witcher is blacked out. In part 6, Geralt wakes in a dungeon with Kraden, who fills him in on the day's events. The Witcher, possessed and in a trance, marched around town harassing each of the counselors who would have wronged Yennefer. On his way to the temple, where an entire unit of municipal guards was waiting for him, he fainted. Kraden got involved with the guards, and they were both thrown into the dungeon. Kraden apologizes to Geralt for not attempting to stop him, and admits to Geralt that he is, quote, fascinated by Yennefer, and was afraid of the Witcher hurting her. Dungeon guards arrive on behalf of the counselor, Laurelnose, and beat the Witcher. One mocks Geralt, asking if he needs anything from the counselor, if the Witcher has, quote, any wishes at all. Geralt responds, just one, that you burst, you son of a whore, and the guard turns red, clutching his stomach, and bursts. So this is very much like Geralt comes to in almost a hangover-styled moment where he has no understanding of the events that happened after Yennefer really set him loose on the town. He's learning about all of this from Kraden, and he's just groaning and just like, oh, did I really do that?
Yeah, and it gets progressively worse and worse. He's like, what? I did what? It's just like your worst hangover moment. You're right.
And I'm sure that there are probably people listening to this that can relate. I personally cannot relate, but I'm sure that there's someone out there that'll be like,
I can't either. I don't think I've ever been blackout drunk before.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
Same here. I've never experienced
have
such
you?
an incident. Blackout drunk? No. I mean, not to the point that I pulled down the pants of another villager and
beat him
with a belt.
And then especially for Geralt, just learning that he was basically harassing the whole city to the point where he had an entire unit of guards just waiting for him. And I think they mentioned that they basically had everything from the armory except for an actual trebuchet or...
Wow, go get him, Geralt.
So to back up for a second, Geralt left Erdal's, he went straight to a pawnbroker's, just punched the pawnbroker across the face, completely unprompted, left that, went straight to Laurelnose's, the apothecary's place, drags him out of his home, pulls down his pants in front of this entire crowd and just starts lashing him with a belt.
Yo.
I think he says something about this is the kind of gossiping that a child would do, so you get a child's punishment, and then he just lashes him in the ass, and it's just it's funny, but it's awful.
He's got the quips. And in this case, actual whips.
Oh, no.
Oh, the witty whips. The Quitty Wips.
He's got some Quitty Wips, literally.
Oh, Lord. After Kraden lets Geralt know what has happened, Kraden apologizes to the Witcher that he didn't stop him earlier. He's like, I could have tried. And Geralt was like, based on the trance and based on my own personal strength, you wouldn't have been able to stop me. Kraden says, no, but I didn't want to stop you because I didn't want you to hurt her. I was afraid that if I broke the trance and somehow, if I'd stopped you somehow, when you came to, you would go back and you would try to hurt Yennefer, and I didn't want that. It was never about you, it was about her. And you see here how deeply he, quote unquote, loves her.
This is when you cue Usher's You Got It Bad.
Give this guy some apple juice. He is thirsty.
Yeah, this was a really interesting way to manifest his little crush on her. Just I'm trying to protect her, so I'll protect her by beating some other guy. I'm not sure if I totally believe him. He might be trying to get some aggression out. It's clear that Yennefer and you have some chemistry.
That's a total fuckboy move. Let's be real.
Word.
Yeah. It's not great. I mean, everything that seems to drive Kraden throughout this chapter is just his one-sided love for Yennefer. It's definitely weird. She does take advantage of it repeatedly throughout the whole chapter and acknowledges that she does. And here, in this moment of vulnerability with Geralt, who just seems to draw vulnerability out from whoever he's with, no matter the occasion.
He's a listener. He's a sensitive boy.
He's one of those people. Just brings it out of people.
I wonder if he's just so quiet that people feel the need to fill the void with
That's
him
exactly it.
and just keep talking.
I bet, yeah.
Well, while he's not trying to extrapolate information, he's just staring at you. He's like, yeah, could go on. Keep talking.
Dungeon guards arrive on behalf of Laurelnose and beat the Witcher. One mocks Geralt, asking if he needs anything, and they just kind of keep mocking him. They pin down his arms, they pin down his feet. The warden just starts beating the Witcher. They provoke him enough that the Witcher just says in spite, one wish, that you burst, you son of a whore. And then the guard just grabs his stomach, he turns red, and just explodes.
He literally bursts.
Which, I'm imagining, again, it's August, so Stranger Things season 3 released recently.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a bunch of that. There was a lot of, like, bursting in Stranger Things 3. So that's the only thing, that's the visual that's coming to mind right now.
A lot of insides becoming outsides.
Oh.
yeah. At this point, I thought that Yennefer did it, or Geralt unknowingly, but we'll go into that.
In part 7, Geralt and Corydon are brought to Mayor Neville's office, where they are joined by the priest Crep. Geralt tells the mayor and the priest most of the events at the river. Suddenly, a portal appears in the wall and Dandelion through it, hollering that the Witcher is innocent. The group tries to get to the bottom of his yelling before Crep realizes that Yennefer forced the bard to give up his last wish and hopes to capture the djinn before it returns to its own dimension. Thunder booms outside and everyone rushes to the window, where they see the djinn above Erdel's tavern, despite Yennefer's magical bindings. The Witcher asks Crep to reopen and stabilize the portal. Geralt passes through the portal to Erdel's inn. So Crep is a religious figure. He was the next person that was on Yennefer's list for Geralt. After the pawnbroker, and Laurel knows Geralt was about to go after the priest in the temple. And because he was like giving out large sermons about Yennefer and her sins and everything, Crep starts to explain like the mechanics of what djinns are, where they come from, how sorcerers can use them for magic. Crep here says that, there are different planes and dimensions, which relate to the elements, so water, fire, air, and earth.
With these 4 powers in the Avatar returns. We're truly children of pop culture. God, we're so saturated.
I know, we've had way too many pop culture references.
It's funny, you were thinking about Avatar, I was thinking of Earth, Wind, and Fire. Do you remember? Do any songs?
Crep goes on to say that each of these elements has its own dimension, which is called a plane. Each of these planes are inhabited by different kinds of genies, air genies being djinns. He explains that a genie like this is a reservoir of magical energy, which sorcerers can draw from to expand their powers. Crep also confirms the idea that Geralt was skeptical of, that djinns can grant wishes. 3 wishes come from each genie, then it's free and escapes to its own dimension.
Yeah, actually going back to what you said before about how like there's a water plane, a fire plane, and so on, I thought that was really interesting. When I was reading, I was like, ooh, what does that mean for each genie?
The overall powers that they possess, I'm not sure how broad they are, because he does mention that an earth genie once helped a wizard move a mountain because it was just blocking his view from his tower. Or Sapkowski doesn't really note here if, for example, moving Earth is a power exclusive to Earth genies, or if, like, any genie can do that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering while I was reading. Thought that was interesting that it's a different element attached, and how does that affect, what kind of magic that they do? And that's what I like and don't like about short stories, actually, because with short stories, you kind of get little pieces, and it kind of introduces something, it teases a little something, and you don't get, like, the full-blown mythology of this.
It's a teaser, yeah. There's 2 straight pages of expo in here. We're just trying to understand the mechanics of where did this genie come from? What's happening? Why did this guy burst? It's hilarious. There's a little buddy cop routine between Crep and Neville. Neville is just like, oh, my town, but my town.
Oh, right. Yeah,
all the while Crep is like, you've unleashed this apocalyptic power upon our world. You and this woman, how dare you? While Neville's like, my town!
They're very true to their positions, the two of them, as the priest and as the mayor, respectively.
True bureaucrats. And yeah, we do get we're understanding how deep Yennefer's threads attach to the narrative. And Geralt, he's our surrogate everyday guy just at this moment, like, oh, this is happening now, and this is terrible.
Yeah, so they're having this discussion, and then all of a sudden Dandelion just pops through this portal. They're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, because this happens very suddenly, no one was expecting it, and Dandelion's just kind of screaming. He says that, Yennefer woke him up, or that I guess he was awake, and she just tells him, say that this is your wish, my only wish, to say that the Witcher is innocent, and she just shoves him through the portal. Crep at this point makes the connection that Yennefer just made Dandelion say his last wish. Now she's going to try to capture the genie. And as that happens, they hear this huge boom outside, and everyone rushes to the window. I'm imagining it like Friends when they go to run and see Ugly Naked Guy.
Yes!
Just the 6 of them piled on the window, peering out. The djinn is out of Erdel's tavern and just wreaking havoc in the town despite being bound down magically. The mayor, Neville, is just freaking out about his town. Geralt again just says, like, Crep, I need you to do this thing, open the portal. And Crep starts giving him this huge monologue about, like, but the sin, but your sin, but her sin.
And
like,
my taxes. Pay my taxes.
And Geralt was like, yeah, okay, whatever, but, like, can you do it? Can you actually do it? And Krepp is like, yeah. So Krepp opens the portal, and then on his way out, the Witcher asks, that exorcism that made you really angry, what do the words mean? Krepp says, like, indeed, what a moment for quips and jokes. Geralt says, please, Mr. Krepp, sir. Reminds me of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Please, Mr. Krepp, sir. And the priest says, it's your last wish, so I'll tell you. It means, essentially, get out of here and go fuck yourself. And so that's what Geralt's been saying as this exorcism for this whole period. And Geralt kind of jumps into the portal laughing.
I love that reveal. Like, there was like such build up to this in the narrative because they didn't tell you the words that Geralt was saying. He thought it was like this interesting like exorcism, and then Yennefer was like, oh, it was just something rather indecent. And then you find out like, yeah, it is rather indecent and not very witty. She said it was witty and indecent or something like that.
Maybe
right?
the actual wording of it was witty, because we don't know what the literal translation is. He's just
right.
like,
okay.
He's just like, I mean, it essentially means like,
Be
get out of
gone
here
from
and fuck
here
yourself.
and go fucketh thyself. I love how it's referenced here as a callback. It's such an inside joke within the narrative.
Yeah.
And they do bring it up 3 instances. And it's such a major point of resolving their first conflict with the Jinn. It literally is just a practical joke that this random priestess played on Geralt.
Yeah.
Really crude.
I love it. It's so
yeah,
good.
I think some of the best shows and books and stuff, they do that. Callbacks are really important. It makes world building more believable because it's like, okay, this is a world in which these rules apply and these rules are reinforced because this thing keeps popping up. So whether that's a person or a metaphor or a phrase, I think that's, I don't know, it's nice world building. It makes it really cozy.
So the pudding is the site. It's absolutely wonderful. It's like pudding.cool. But they make like infographics and charts about like different random pop culture things. And they had a chart about how callbacks affect stand-up comedy.
Yes.
And you can see how like in their little charts about graphing laughs throughout a comedy special, people always got the loudest and greatest laugh when they had a really good callback. So you see this with John Mulaney, you see this with Ali Wong, there's a number of other comics. I love comedy. I just got back from a trip from Montreal exclusively for the Just for Laughs Festival. And there were a couple of people there that did it so well, and it just kind of always tied their narratives and their storytelling together.
I think the basis of comedy is the rule of 3, because comedic rhetoric is based on subverting expectations. When you create a pattern, usually you start with one and then you repeat on the second, and then you can choose to break it on the third, or you usually break it. So that's a punchline is usually what happens on the thirds. I just love in this instance with how Geralt shoos away the genie, gets laughed at by Yennefer, and then
you're at that point you're like, wait, what does this phrase mean?
Yeah.
Like it gets you curious, and on the third time they get you. It's just like, ooh, go fuck yourself. Sick burn.
Hey.
Keep on saying that.
I love it. Little masterclass in comedy. I'm sitting here with the stupidest smile on my face like, oh, this is so cool. So from this point on, we just jump straight into the action. We're now on part 8. There are 17 total parts in the rest of the chapter, and they're all very fast. We continually go inside and outside the tavern to see what's happening with the Jinn, what's happening on the outside with everybody. So this part of the story from now until the end is very, very fast-paced. In part 8, Geralt passes through the portal and falls into the floor of Erdel's Inn, where Yennefer is desperately attempting to contain the Jinn in a sphere. It attempts to attack the sorceress, but when Geralt moves between them, the genie doesn't attack and roars instead. Yennefer opens a portal for Geralt, but he pulls her through too. They fall into the center of a crowded ballroom, and Yennefer lashes out at him before jumping back through the fading portal. They return to Erdel's Inn, and she continues to beat him for intervening. So we see here, even though Geralt enters the fray, Yennefer just doesn't want any help from him, and she feels like he's going to be more of a nuisance than a help. No matter when she's in danger, she never backs away from this fight, and she always steps toward it. She has every intention of continuing, and I think that you see that this power that she has and this perception of self that she has is not only applicable to how she treats other people, it never turns off, even when she's in the face of this supernatural danger.
What I appreciate about these past 2 chapters is just more dimension to Yennefer. Like, she's not this vindictive femme fatale, and that there is definitely more to Yennefer than we realize.
In the next few parts, we're brought outside Erdel's Inn, where Dandelion, Neville, Krepp, and the elves and other onlookers have gathered. They can see that Yennefer and Geralt are fighting inside. Erdel laughs about the destruction of his tavern, saying that he had the place insured for a massive sum that also covers magical and supernatural events. Back inside the tavern, Yennefer uses magic to restrain Geralt, and Geralt tells her he needs to tell her the truth. Outside the tavern, Krepp reveals to the group that the Jinn is fulfilling Geralt's wishes. The first, for it to go away, and the second about the Warden, which is why Yennefer can't master it. Geralt hasn't given up his last wish yet. Dandelion bemoans Geralt's getting himself involved in saving Yennefer and asks if Geralt could use his last wish to save them both. Krepp ponders that he might, but only if it was the right wish. Yennefer demands again that Geralt gives his last wish, and as she does, Geralt realizes what she was before she became a sorceress. The djinn breaks through. Yennefer goes to battle it, and the Witcher makes his last wish. Outside the tavern, the crowd watches the djinn escape, free from Geralt's will.
Yeah, this is a lot going on. It was really fast-paced. And I think at this point, I kind of realized, oh, wishes. This is, he can, it's not just Dandelion.
Yeah, I mean, that is the big twist for the story, is that it was never Dandelion in the first place. And it doesn't reveal when Geralt realized. Maybe it was when the warden blew up, but I don't think it would have been before that. He makes that connection somewhere. I didn't realize either until it was in the exposition.
What I know of him, he's just a very perceptive person. He's always looking at details. He's always noticing details about people, what they're saying, what they're wearing. And if he says you burst, and this guy, he actually bursts. I think that's, he's a smart guy. I think he figured it out at that point.
Because there's this pretty particular passage where Yennefer is urging Geralt to hurry up. The passage reads, the wish, Geralt, hurry up. What do you desire? Immortality, riches, fame? Geralt stays silent throughout this entire sequence. And then he realizes, oh, Yennefer is beautiful.
I know. Ma'am, you're busy right now. Can you just focus on anything that is not...
Oh, he's thirsty. He needs his apple juice. In this instance, he realizes he loves her. I don't really...
Wow, that was fast. He met her today.
I know, that was a really quick swipe right, and then...
I wonder what it was. How do you fall in love so quickly?
That's what I find to be the interesting thing. We had talked briefly about all these men kind of revolving around Yennefer's world, and her being able to pick and choose as to how they, for lack of a better word, serve her and serve her intentions and purpose. We get illusions that she's a fascinating woman, that she's smart, that she's this kind of femme fatale trope, and there's something very alluring about her. I think it's still really ambiguous as to why Geralt suddenly head over heels, other than meh, she's got boobies.
Yeah, because the passage reads, but suddenly Geralt knew the truth. He knew it. He knew what she used to be, what she remembered, what she couldn't forget, and what she lived with. So I'm hoping Sapkowski is implying that, oh, she's a strong woman, she's independent, she can handle her own.
Nope.
Except it's immediately preceded by, oh, she's beautiful.
Well, I mean, it goes back to Geralt's perception. Geralt suddenly looks into her cold eyes. This is so bizarre. He looks into her cold eyes and he realizes oh shit, she was a hunchback.
Right, yeah.
And he's just oh my god, she can never read this in my mind, and he just suppresses this information so deep down in his soul that he chooses to forget it.
Yeah, Geralt as a character and romantic interest here is I don't see it, but
I think it's just the format. It's a short story. It's not a full-length book. In this format, he can't really expound upon what is it about Yennefer that that really touches him, which is unfortunate because this is supposed to be their first meeting, and you really want to know the details, what does Geralt see in her, and why is she different from all the women that he's ever encountered. What about her touches him, and that something does touch him about her.
We do know something does. Yay. Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet, but there's be touching to be had. I mean, yeah, I think you absolutely hit it on the head. We don't really get any understanding from Geralt / the narrator of anything that's beyond the superficial.
I guess it kind of gets revealed in a more long format, hopefully.
Again, this entire section just is so fast-paced, in and out of the inn. We get a lot of exposition from Krepp as a proxy for the reader, if the reader hasn't caught on yet, because, spoiler alert, I didn't. So Krepp was there for your girl, and just kind of helping move the plot along so you really have an understanding of what's going on and why Geralt is saying what he's saying, why Yennefer's reacting the way that she does. Eventually Geralt makes his last wish. We never find out what it is. We just see the aftermath of it in parts 16 and 17. So the Witcher and Sorceress are miraculously alive after the destruction of the tavern, as if having been protected by an invisible force. Yennefer asks Geralt about the wish that he made, completely in awe of it. And then they make love on the ruins of the tavern floor, and for the first time, Geralt calls her Yen.
Pound chicka wow wow.
In part 17, the group outside tries to see if the Sorceress and the Witcher are still alive. Corydon peers through a shattered window and sees the pair, backing away and telling the group that they should leave. And that's the end of The Last Wish.
So good. Going back to his last wish, it's ambiguous, right? You don't know what his wish is, but somehow the wish protected both him and Yen. And I'm just like, wow, what was that wish? Like, I want to know. It reminds me of, what's that movie? It's the Tarantino movie with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, Pulp Fiction.
Okay, so there's this suitcase that everyone's after, and inside is something really valuable.
Shines gold every time someone opens the suitcase. Yeah,
like when it opens, it like sparkles and like shines golden light on the person looking at it, and they're just like, oh my god, their eyes go wide, and you're just like, what is in it? What is in the suitcase? And you never know at the end of the movie. You don't see what's in it. And that's how I feel about this wish. Like, what was his wish? What was so clever and like so like something that obviously touched Yennefer's heart and something that, you know, made them want to, you know, get it on.
Do you guys have any hypotheses around what that wish could have been or how it could have been phrased?
I don't know. That's a tough one. What do you think, Crisanto?
I think he wished to die of old age with her.
Ooh.
I think that is... I feel like that's the most straightforward.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Just to give any, like, hypotheses?
No, I was just struck by, like, what is it? I was that person who was just, like, taking the book and like holding it between my two fists and like shaking it. What is it? Tell me your secrets. I can't even tell you. It really is like that suitcase in Pulp Fiction. Like, I don't know what's in it, but it's like it must have been something good
or ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like you can't kill us until we drink orange juice or something stupid.
Yeah, though it does say at some point that like their fates are kind of bound.
So the general theory on the internet is that Geralt wished for their fates to tie back together. And, you know, the phrasing of it is a little ambiguous. There are other people on the internet that have different theories about what was said. Sapkowski has turned down some of them. But, you know, for the most part, the sentiment around the web really does seem to be that it was just some sort of phrasing of like, I need our fates to be tied together. Because presumably... the djinn couldn't kill its master. So therefore, if the djinn couldn't kill Geralt's and Geralt's fate was tied to Yennefer, then the genie couldn't kill either of them. So that's kind of what the theory is.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's a good short-term solution, but like Geralt, you know, he has a dangerous job. Like, what if he gets killed and then like all of a sudden Yen just like drops dead? Like, that kind of sucks.
Well, also Yennefer does say like, you've condemned yourself to me, and it's very melodramatic.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so unexpected from both of them. Like, Geralt's a little less so just because he's been, like, fantasizing about her this whole time. But for Yennefer, and he calls her in this moment Yen, and she, like, just succumbs to him completely, and...
Only my parents call me that.
Ew. Gross.
Like, it makes you wonder, like, what other people have said to her, or if this is something that she's putting on as, like, an airs, for her to be, like, I can't believe you just said that. Like, what would make you do that? I'm completely in awe of this. Let me make love to you. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know. I'm skeptical of it.
Actually, that's a good point. You just brought something up that made me realize, like, well, we were talking about how she uses her assets, whether it's magic or her beauty or, you know, her romantic aura to kind of get what she needs. And I wonder if it's supposed to be ambiguous. Like, does she really like Geralt? Is she really touched by what he did for her? Or is she just kind of like, oh, this guy looks really useful. He's smart. I'm going to make sure he's in my pocket for a little bit longer. And I'm sure if you ship the two of them, you want to believe that it's like, oh, it's love at this first or second sight or whatever. But yeah, that's something to discuss in the future, I guess. But the rom-com lovers out there is that, yeah, like there's something about these two that are really special. And this is their consummation of that specialness God. Uniting.
Hey.
I think the feelings are genuine. Everything up to this point is validated, like the story as very much a rom-com summer blockbuster action romance, you know what I mean? Like everything is tied up in a neat bow.
Yeah, for the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, it is kind of the second to last story of the book, so you kind
and
of
we still
that.
have 6 more books left.
Exciting.
Oh man.
Can you imagine the oddly specific circumstance that he could have wished for?
He wished for them to share their 80th birthday party together.
I want to make a goat farm with you at the age of 75.
Oh, that's awesome. So
Oh my God, you said that just as I was
so we can, I want us to fish to go catfishing with our children.
Like, you can't kill Yennefer until we've had some waffles and ice cream, and it has to be the year 2055.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I have to align my face with the moon, but only on a quarter moon.
exactly, it has to be on quarter moon, but also if it's not on a Thursday, it has to be a blue moon. And also, can I have some lilac and gooseberries? Like, if there's no lilac and gooseberries, like, it's it's a deal breaker. I'm sorry. Like, this is, and then it turns into like a Postmates order.
And what about, did you fuck yourself yet, Jeannie?
Oh yeah, so
I forgot about that, bro.
I know. So that thing. Let's talk about that for a second. So now that we have obviously revealed that Geralt has been the holder of these wishes, the very first wish that he said when he held the seal and kind of thrust it in front of the genie was, this translated exorcism: "Get out of here and go fuck yourself." And even Krepp mentions this, saying like, I'd be really upset if I had to fulfill Geralt's first wish down to the letter, and it's kind of implied what the djinn might have had to do.
Yeah, like, how do you literally, like, fuck yourself? Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Man, the genie's all powerful. He doesn't have to go fuck himself.
But he has to. I know he's all powerful, but he's powerful. But at the same time, he has to fulfill a wish.
Yeah.
He has these constraints. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's all powerful to do it. But how?
Master, do I have to?
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh man,
I'm never gonna unhear that. No.
I can just imagine the genie. You know that meme with the calculus lady?
Oh no, the equations going around her head.
I can imagine the genie just going, fuck myself. What?
I need to remove that soundbite that you just said. I need to repress it quietly the way that Geralt repressed his knowledge about Yennefer, and just exercise it from my body.
Oh god.
Oh, bless. So now that we finished the chapter, what did you guys think of it?
So good. I love it. New fan. Yeah, this was my first time reading anything. Well, this wasn't the first.
This is my first time reading anything.
Holy
No,
crap.
I know how to read, I swear. I wasn't lying about Harry Potter and YA. I know how to read. No, so sorry, I paused at a really awkward point. So this is my first time reading something from the Witcher saga, and I've fallen in love. I really like it. Like, I really love like contemporary stories, but this really brought me back to high fantasy, and I just love it.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, it very much reads like a summer blockbuster film. It's very balanced. It has action, it has romance, it has Quitty Wips.
Yeah.
Surprisingly a good comedy. I think like high fantasy gets a rep for being sometimes too inaccessible, too like
Boring.
too boring. Yeah, actually, like too political. But at least in this is a very simple narrative to follow. It's not too complicated. What I really do appreciate what he does is he's a very efficient writer. Like, he doesn't dwell too long. This is an anthology, so despite having so much lore to cover, he efficiently covers like what you need to know in each story. At least in this instance, you need to know the basic elements, like Yennefer is up to no good, this mysterious figure, and Geralt is a stonewall, and Dandelion is a goofy sidekick. So Sapkowski really lays out foundations really well. His exposition's very sharp, and his dialogue is extremely witty and quippy. Dialogue is extremely difficult to write, especially if you're constantly moving a plot forward. It's a true art form.
That's it for our show today. Jess Crisanto, thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you to our community for listening. So for you guys, where can everyone find you, and is there anything that our international Hanza can help you with?
Okay, so I'm at J Bagsy, J_BAGSY. It's very complicated, I know. So something that would be easier for you if you wanted to follow me on, say, Instagram, go to at Team Lensflare, TEAMLENSFLARE. Whew, that was hard. Yes, so Crisanto and I, with 6 other people, we have this photography group, and we do photography of cosplay. So every once in a while there's conventions and stuff, and we put people's cosplays to life in photography and videos and things like that. So you can go follow us.
That was thorough. Hi, my name's Crisanto Jordan.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a media freelancer. I do photo, video, and editing. That's so vague. Wow.
I just have to say, because Crisanto's really bad at promoting his own stuff. Like, for example, his name on Instagram is Great Giraffe. I mean, it has nothing to do with his actual brand, which is Crisanto Jorda. He's a
drag him a little more, Jess.
He's a photographer. He's a videographer. He also does general like script writing and any type of production. He's edited stuff like that. And he's been getting into 3D animation. So if you need like some 3D graphics, like hit him up. Sorry, I didn't mean to take over your outro and like plug. I don't know, but it's his profession. I want to make sure he gets acknowledged.
I feel warm and fuzzy from watching just all of this interaction unfold in front of me in person. It's very sweet, and I love it very much.
Yeah, just go to crisantojorda.com. That's CRISANTOJORDA.com.
And I will link it in the show notes.
Yay.
Yes, thank you.
And
please check out Team Lens Flare. I'm a resident artist for that group.
Go to @TeamLensFlare, and Crisanto, me, and all the other members of Team Lensflare are tagged in every post.
If any of you are local artists, if you love Witcher or cosplay Witcher, yeah, please hit us up. We would love to shoot you.
Team Lensflare is active mostly on the East Coast, right, guys?
Yes.
And they're absolutely phenomenal, like just seeing their work. And it's like they do such an amazing job of bringing people's ideas and largest cosplay fantasies to life. And it's so incredible to see and watch. I've been friends with you guys for a really long time. Mm-hmm. Jess and I have known each other since we were in Catholic school together in middle school. And Crisanto I met in college. It just absolutely blew my mind, like just to know someone from middle school and then meet someone in college. And all of a sudden they get together and now they're on my podcast.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler. Yeah, we're a couple.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, we're dating.
And Jess and Crisanto will be back to wrap up the Last Wish compilation with a discussion of its framing narrative, The Voice of Reason. Thanks for joining us at the breakfast table. For show notes, transcripts of each episode, and a complete list of our social platforms and listening services, head over to breakfastandbeauclair.com. Breakfast in Beauclair is created by Alyssa from GoodMorhen. It's hosted by Alyssa with the Tidings from Toussaint news segment by Lars from Witcherflix. The show is edited by Alyssa with the Breakfast in Beauclair theme by Motorfilter Media and the Tidings from Toussaint theme by Bettina Campomanes. Breakfast in Beauclair is produced by Alyssa in New York City with Louise, the owner of the Trillish Porpoise, Cool Guy Henry, Eric the Godling, Katie the Redhead Toussaint, Jacob, David, Mahakam Elderjo, Julie, and Sylvia of Skellige. Special thanks to Jess and Crisanto for joining us for this episode and our international Hanza for their support.